Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Patriots Real Time Podcast. I'm your host, Theodis, and I was joined alongside Grant, or as you may know him, Patriot Red Zone on Instagram. And today we are going to be doing something a little special, not the typical podcast. We're going to be diving deep into the Jerod Mayo era, the short-lived Jerod Mayo era, as the Patriots head coach. But before we do that, Grant, how you doing today?
Good. Appreciate you having me on.
Yep, thank you for coming on. So yeah, let's just get right into it. The Jerod Mayo era. It was a mess. I want you to give a 60-second, I don't know, overview of what we're going to talk about today.
I think a mess is exactly the best way to describe it. It is from the second that they had their opening press conference, and even before it, the writing was on the wall that it was going to be a mess, and it ended up being a mess that taught us a very valuable lesson that I think put us on the right track. Like it brought us down, and it was enough to be a major wake up call to come back up. But it
Mm-hmm.
is just a timeline of inconsistencies and coaching mishaps and ownership involvement that I'm sure we'll dive into here in a second.
Mm-hmm. And I like how you said even before the opening press conference, because I don't know if you remember, but late in the 2023 season, there was an article I believe Mark Daniels wrote, talking about how, I don't remember the exact words that he used, but talking about how Jerod Mayo was arrogant, I think, and how he didn't listen to what Bill Belichick was saying, or they were on a different page, or he thought he had. And this really starts at the end of the 2022 season when the Patriots extended Jerod Mayo because he got a head coaching interview with the Carolina Panthers, I believe. So Robert Kraft decided to extend him and write into his contract that after 2 seasons, he would be the next head coach of the Patriots, which that only happened 4 times before, I believe, in the history of the NFL, which is crazy. Like, I don't know. You didn't even do a coaching search. I guess we can start there.
Yeah, I think so. I looked it up too beforehand because I remember it was like 2021 when the Eagles interviewed him during their coaching search. They ended up
Okay.
obviously hiring Nick Sirianni, but he
Hmm.
was hired then, and there was like pieces that were coming out from reporters. I don't know if it was New England or Philadelphia, but wherever, that the Eagles were like blown away in their interview with him. And I think
Hmm.
that kind of started the Jerod Mayo hype train because it was like a young staffer on the defensive side, but obviously this is a time in 2021 when tons of young guys are getting hired, especially that haven't held like premier
Hmm.
play calling roles yet. But again, like Mayo like, he may have not had the title of defensive coordinator, but as far as we know, he was by the end of it pretty much the defensive coordinator. Belichick
Hmm.
being the coach would have a huge hand in that pot, but
Hmm.
Mayo was doing a lot of coordinator-esque play calling things. So anyways, 2021, it comes that way that he's like this like huge, like brightest minds in the game. And then it goes into what you said. I actually forgot about the Panthers thing. I don't really remember um, the second interview. He was interviewed in 23, you said?
I think it was like before the 23 season. Who the
Yeah.
Panthers
So
ended up
like
hiring?
that was
Was it
Dave
Dave Canales?
Canales.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and of course, like a lot of the guys, just because the way that NFL set it up with between the Rooney Rule and the development picks that they give away, like guys like Jerod Mayo now had an opportunity to get the interviews that otherwise wouldn't. You know, the Patriots when they interviewed
Yeah.
Pep Hamilton and those
Hmm.
guys, like
Yeah.
the way the NFL has kind of set up the hiring process. But you're right, they didn't really go through a coaching search, and I think
Hmm.
that kind of is where it all begins. So you've got Mayo that gets this written into his contract that he's the next head coach, and that's Kraft's way of saying like this is how we're going to retain him. This is going to be
Hmm.
the way that we keep this young bright mind.
Yep.
And I think what happened is it all just happened way quicker than they thought it would. You know,
Hmm.
Mayo was what 36, I think, when he
Something.
got
Yep.
hired, something along those lines. And I think that they thought Bill was going to be around a little bit more, and
Hmm.
it just I think that Kraft felt like his hand was forced. And at the time of firing Bill, mutually parting ways, they Kraft was just like, well, I mean, I owe this to him. I wrote this in this guy's contract, and
Yeah.
he got the job.
Hmm. Yeah. So I actually looked it up. He declined the interview with the Panthers, so he didn't actually take the Panthers interview. And I'm trying to find the statement. This is going to be hard for me to find. Okay, I found it actually. So this is like the weirdest statement of all time. But on January 12th, 2023, Patriots to extend Jerod Mayo. will begin interviewing for an offensive coordinator. So it has nothing to do with Jerod Mayo and the title. Like that doesn't make any sense.
I
But
remember
the
this. Yeah, yeah, this was
yeah,
bizarre.
the New England Patriots and head coach Bill Belichick have begun contract extension discussions. So they haven't even extended him with Jerod Mayo that would keep him with the team long term. In addition, the team will begin interviewing for offensive coordinator candidates beginning next week. So just it's like two sentences, but one of them is about Jerod Mayo, and then the other is about the offensive coordinator. It's like the weirdest. I've never seen anyone do that. I don't think anyone's done that since or before. I don't know what was going through your head when you saw that.
I think it created a really weird situation where like
Hmm.
we all knew who the next head coach was going to be, whether that was Bill
Hmm.
retiring, getting fired, whatever that might have been, him walking away. And I just can't imagine that when you like it's you Kraft wanted to instill that faith in him so that he didn't lose him because
Hmm.
like we said, the Eagles and the Panthers, like people were reaching out and that was stirring. Like he could
Hmm.
go lead for another staff, and since he didn't have that title of play caller on the Patriot staff, he wasn't the defensive
Hmm.
coordinator. He could
Yeah.
make a somewhat lateral move elsewhere. So Kraft is
Hmm.
like, here we go. All right, I'm making him the next head coach. Like I see this, I have this gut feeling, whatever.
Hmm.
But then that just creates such a weird situation in the building, right? Where like
Hmm.
Bill knows the next guy is right there behind him. Like whether it's going to be on his terms or not, the next guy is right there. And I just
Hmm.
felt like that is just like an unnecessary pressure. We just were talking before we started recording about Milton and May and the whole
Yeah.
dynamic of when you know that there's a guy behind you that's exciting. I mean, that's kind
Hmm.
of the same thing. It's no different than if you have two quarterbacks, you don't really have one,
Right. Hmm.
cliche. It's the same idea. These guys like how is Bill supposed to kind of lead this team when everyone knows that Mayo just got this written into his contract, and if anything happens with Bill, then he's the next guy right there. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, of course, like, and no fault to Mayo, Mayo's gonna want the head coaching job,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Hmm.
that's every coach. There's only 32 of those jobs. Everyone wants one. So how is Mayo completely then bought in if he knows that this opportunity is his best? It
Yeah.
just created a bizarre and weird dynamic for everyone. And I think that statement is actually probably the best starting point for where it
Hmm.
all got kind of weird because I think media relations and just the way that the team publicly handled the whole saga was what made it as bad as it did.
Yeah, and not only did Bill know that Jerod was in the building and Jerod was going to be the next head coach, he also knew how long he had until Jerod was going to be the next head coach. He had a max of 2 years left. So I don't know. Maybe if the Patriots win the Super Bowl, Jerod, Robert like has a meeting with Jerod. And he's like, "Hey, we just won the Super Bowl in 2023. You understand that Bill's going to be the coach longer than 2 years." But like I don't know. Like it's so weird, like you mentioned, that Bill Belichick had a a clock on him. He had a clock on him, and he knew it. So yeah, and like you said, like Gerard, what's his incentive to like coach hard and coach? I don't know, maybe like players respect him more, which is huge, obviously. But like, if things go south, he's gonna be the head coach. So it's such a weird dynamic, and I don't understand what the point of the statement was.
I think kind of at the end there, what really happened was, and we saw reports from everyone on this throughout the
Mhm.
season. I remember kind of just when when that Germany game happened, and I believe it was Curran that put out like
Yeah.
that was kind of when
Hmm.
Kraft made his decision that this thing was over with
Hmm.
Bill.
Yeah.
And I think the big overarching thing was that Kraft just wanted control back. He had felt that he lost
Yeah.
control of his team. And whether that's right or wrong, however he feels or however we feel about that, he had kind of he'd given that control up that a lot of head coaches don't get. I mean, that's he was making
Mhm.
final decisions. As much as it was murky, we didn't know what his exact contract situation was. We didn't know who got the final say. Obviously, the staff was built out in a way unlike a lot of other staffs that we see around the NFL. But Bill was the end all be all, and typically, that's the owner. So
Yeah.
the only thing that Kraft could do would be fire him. And I think that what Kraft saw was that there was an opportunity with Mayo to kind of like, coax this guy up and like this is going to be
Hmm.
the word collaborative was said in that
Yeah.
opening press conference 700 times. And it was like that just he wanted this different dynamic with a head coach and I think that he thought he could get that with Mayo and it was more about having that dynamic than it was the actual person and I think that ended up
Yeah.
clearly being shown.
And that's the second time he made that mistake because if you remember Parcells had control. He fires Parcells. He goes to or Parcells leaves, I guess, and then he hires Pete Carroll, who's, I don't want to say, like, he's like a puppet, I guess you could say, where he'll follow the orders. I know, not the greatest uh, word choice there, but and then he goes to Bill because he realized that doesn't work, and then he forgets that he made that mistake. What was it, like 25 years before? And he goes to Jerod, and he's able to correct it in 1 year. But yeah, also, do you remember before the Bills win, where the Patriots beat the Bills in 2023, how Ian Rappaport reported how Bill signed a 2 year extension at the
Yes.
beginning of the season, and
Yep.
how he wanted, yeah, because I remember, or you said, like, we didn't know anything about his contract. That was the first time in 24 years of coaching that we knew about Bill Belichick's contract, which is super weird
Exactly.
to have him just come out there and tell Rappaport.
It felt like we had so many battling, like when it at the point of um Bill kind of seeing the writing on the wall, knowing this, like, and it's, I mean, it's still going on today, but like we had Bill probably leaking the contract information so that
Hmm.
people understood that he was secure. Like, hey, listen, like I'm not walking away. If this
Yeah.
thing goes, like I'm signed for 2 years is what I think he was trying
Hmm.
to say with that. So he puts that out, and then I mean, a few weeks later, Kraft is, oh, they're mulling over firing him. I guess what's the timeline on that, right? The Germany game would have happened before we beat Buffalo because Germany was like week
After
10 or something. It was after
we beat Buffalo
we'd
in like
beaten
week
Buffalo
7.
before.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Hmm.
like it's like the dueling conflict there, and then of course like once it ends up happening, it becomes and still is like this just media who Kraft has the Dynasty documentary out.
Yeah.
Even to Jerod Mayo's press conference, he's kind of just talking about like having this, where it's gonna be so nice to have this collaborative effort again.
Hmm.
You alluded to it with the Parcells thing. Like he even talked about that. Like, oh, at the end of Parcells, I lost the way of the football team, and it just got so ugly that I think that they threw, and Kraft said this and when they made the decision to fire Mayo too, that he was like, I put him in an untenable situation. I
Yeah.
kind of half believe that, and we can wrap, at the
Hmm.
end of
Hmm.
Mayo's thing, talk more on that. But I think what really he did is that he wanted a coach that he could collaborate with and have this ideal relationship with, but by doing so, he never really let him off the leash and coach himself, and it just became like untenable
Hmm.
for Mayo in that just in that situation.
Yeah. And a lot of people, when they fired him, were saying like he was put in a hard situation, you can't, or a tough situation, you can't fire him because of that. He inherited the worst roster in the league. He has the worst coaching staff in the league. And I guess kind of true. He did inherit the worst roster in the league. That team had zero talent outside of Christian Gonzalez. Maybe
Yeah,
Christian Barmore didn't even play because he had blood clots. So like realistically, I was thinking about this a week ago or so, but like the 2024 team was actually the worst team of all time because usually you look at the 2023 team, Christian Gonzalez and Matthew Judon go down with injuries. Their quarterback is like the worst in the NFL. So that's why they suck because of injuries and their quarterback play. The Patriots got solid quarterback play from Drake May, and nobody suffered a big injury. Maybe Jawan Bentley. That was your biggest injury. So that team was just constructed horribly. Um,
I think it's you're right on with that. The difference in the 23 team and the 24 team was like poor quarterback play, just not a great staff was built. Obviously, we know all about Patricia and just like
yeah.
who's called, like what was going on there with the play calling. But I think
Well,
what
that was
was
Bill O'Brien's year in 23.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
but like
Mhm.
going from like 22 and 23, 22's
Mhm.
year was like they were like a mid team that ended up falling off
Mhm.
because they'd won like what
Yeah.
it was 6-4 at one point. So
Yeah.
then they course correct, right. They get the play calling back on in
Mhm.
23. But what was going on there was like the offense was just anemic. We've got
Yes. Yeah.
Juju and like the Max situation, that whole thing, and those teams would lose game. I mean, they lost what to the Giants like 10-7. They lost whatever, like six to
Chargers 6-0.
zero.
Yeah.
Yeah, like those type of games, and
Mm.
it was like that was a strong defensive performance. I remember there was games like the one against I believe it was Miami. Like Gonzalez is out at that point, we have like no corners, and it's Miles Bryant and a bunch of guys that nobody had heard of a week prior just
Mhm.
balling out, like giving like it's like so you can see just there's a good coaching work being done there. Now in 24, it was like they it was a prototypical bad team. They'd hang on for 5 minutes and then it would like the doors would come off. And I
Mhm.
think the moment that everyone should have known, and I think Kraft probably did too, was that Chargers game. That was like
Yeah.
that's probably the worst, most embarrassing loss we've ever had. Even in
Yeah.
23, when we lose like 34-0, 36-0 against the Saints, the Cowboys games
Hmm.
like those sucked. Whatever.
Yeah.
They were able to kind of compete later in the year into
Yeah.
December.
Hmm.
But like those games, like the Chargers game in 23, the London game against Jacksonville, it's just those are non-competes, and they're even doing it with competent, somewhat competent quarterback play most of the time.
Yeah. I watched the Cardinals game, which was coming off
Mm.
the bye, and I I watch highlights from the 2023 and 2024 season sometimes. Um, but that game made me visibly, not visibly, but it made me a little bit annoyed and upset. And I was like, this is over a year later, and I'm getting upset. Like they can't move the football. The play calling was just awful. Third and goal, I think from the one, and then fourth and goal from the one. They do two. They hand the ball off twice to Antonio Gibson. I think of all, you have Ramondre Stevenson, who's better suited for short yardage situations, and you hand it to Antonio Gibson, who like no hate to Antonio Gibson, he's a good player, but just not built for that role. The play calling was bad, and then after that game, we can talk about it later. Jerod had a very questionable comment, but I want to get into the opening presser and just a few things that I took away when I watched a little bit of
Yeah,
it. Obviously, we had the young Thundercat comment that Jerod had. That's what he calls it, RKK, and as that was just, I thought it was funny at the time. Now looking back on it, that's kind of weird. Um, and
he
then
literally called
also,
him Thunder like the entire
yeah,
press conference. He just
yeah,
kept being like, and then I told that never happened again. I don't think I
yeah,
ever heard
never
that
happened again.
nickname. Yeah, people were
I
like
don't
they
remember him. I thought of that
PR was like,
during the
dude,
season.
don't stop with that. That's weird.
Yeah, maybe he got some advice from, maybe Robert told him don't call me that.
Yeah, it was weird.
Basically, yeah. Um, and then he had some these are just me nitpicking, but he's commenting on Robert Kraft's font size in his speech, and I was like, this is a little weird. Um, and then there's one thing which they probably shouldn't have rubbed me the wrong way, but it kind of did. He and I was just so used to Bill at this time too, but he says Devin McCourty actually asked him the question, and he was like, "Have you got a chance to celebrate this?" And he's like, "I haven't yet, but we're turning up tonight." And I was like, "I don't know. You got to get to work. You went 4-13, and obviously he can celebrate, and obviously Mike Vrabel went on vacation this year, but I don't know. To me, it was just
It's
you
the
can
wrong
do
message
that,
to send for a
obviously.
team that was in like the
Yeah.
absolute
Hmm.
doldrums of their era.
Yeah.
I think you're spot on with the like all the quotes in the press conference. I had actually like pulled a few up. I think the moment that we talked about like the writing was on the wall with just the
Hmm.
weird media dynamic, but in that press conference, I think looking back at the Mayo era, the main issue outside of roster talent was just this was a guy who like didn't have control of the football team, and
Hmm.
it's all about like being like whether it's like a CEO at a company, a football team. I mean, that's what a coach is, right? He is like
Yeah.
the top, of the
Hmm.
ladder. It's the unification, the alignment, having these guys with just a common goal and a mission. And I thought that that's why like Bill's a football savant, but he was
Hmm.
so good at like the buy-in and just the unified mission. We never had that with Mayo, and it was
Yeah.
just completely inconsistent all the time.
Hmm.
The moment that we like the one coming out of the first moment that we hear him on the mic, it was the I see color versus I don't see color thing.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
like there was obviously the political aspect of that people cared
Yeah.
about. But from our perspective on the football side, it was immediately one of the questions divided coach and owner and they weren't on the same page. And I
Yeah.
felt like that was just the
Hmm.
sign of everything to come because then right after he's whether it was I think it was after, but he goes, we're ready to burn some cash. That obviously
Yep.
becomes a huge thing and then immediately walks that back and
Hmm.
says, "Well, we're going to do that, whatever." So to your point about I'm going to turn up tonight, it's like I think he went into this where he felt like he needed to just all right, the curmudgeon Bill is gone. I'm
Yeah.
gonna be this breath of fresh air. I'm gonna be personable. And people throw around the term like players coach.
Yeah.
I think there's a difference between like relating to the players and being like a player's coach. Some of the guys can say, oh, like Vrabel's great at that. Like I went through the same thing that you did. I'm gonna be
Mhm.
able to put you in a position to win because I know what that looks like. But with the Mayo thing, I think that just being relatable, being a younger guy and being like,
Yeah.
D-Mac, I'm gonna go turn up tonight. Like that was kind of
Mhm.
billed as like, oh, this guy's like he relates to the players. That only goes so far. As soon as the team's
Mhm.
down 14-0, that doesn't matter. Like you've got to just be able to
Mhm.
put them in
Yeah.
that position to win.
Yeah. No. You mentioned the "we're ready to burn some cash" comments that he had on the Greg Hill show. I listened to that also. Um, he
That's
so
right. Yeah,
it's
it was on the radio.
yeah, he starts. So Wiggy starts off. He says, like, I got fired from coaching Brockton High School. He's like, we were 3-8 last year, and immediately Drod's like, sounds like us. And then um, he has this like weird comment where they asked him, who was it? I don't remember exactly who it was, but they asked if he interviewed someone for some position, and he was like, and then he just like randomly yells out like Wes Welker. He's like, we may have interviewed him, we may have not. And I was like, what? This is your head coach? It's like, this feels like Ty Law when he's on the radio now. It's like joking around. But like, this is the head coach of the football team. And he's like joking about who they interviewed and stuff. Um, but yeah, so that was kind of the stuff. And then he obviously said, we're ready to burn some cash. And then I have the quote where he walked it back. I have most of the quote. He says, no, I don't regret it. Look, I'm a first year head coach, which he mentioned so many times during press conferences. I watched a bunch of them, which we'll get to later. And I didn't mean it like burn some cash, which he said, I'm going to burn some cash, but he didn't mean burn some cash. Um, I know we have a lot of cash to utilize, but we're going to utilize it in the right way. And then
And then they just
he said,
didn't, by the way. They
yeah,
just
they didn't.
never used that money.
They signed Antonio Gibson. They signed Armon Watts. They signed, I'm trying to think, Chuks Okorafor. They signed, who else did they
Yeah,
sign?
great work.
Yeah, they utilized their money fantastically. Um,
Right.
no, who else? There was one other guy that I'm trying to think of that they signed that offseason. I feel like, oh, Austin Hooper was the other one, who was actually
Yeah.
not that bad of a signing.
No, I mean
Um,
that was probably the best signing I think I had with my end of the year superlatives.
yeah,
He was the guy for that one. I mean,
yeah,
it went right into right after that. I mean, we go into camp, and there's that's May's rookie year. It's May versus Jacoby for the starting
mm,
job, and it's just like Mayo trying to find that line between is he going to be transparent, is he going to be
mhm,
open? Because I think that was the big thing that Kraft had pushed to him was like we want this like transparent and collaborative relationship, and we want to like
mhm,
because remember he had that moment too where it was I think it was at the press conference, but he was like after the press conference we're gonna do this like vibe and connect with the media. Like he really wanted to be like buddy buddy with the media, and I think it's
yeah,
because he had like spent so much time with them, and he's
mhm,
like he played his entire career in New England.
yep,
He went to work for Optum, right? Like he was
mhm,
just like that. Like he was a local guy. Like he was basically local media to an extent,
yeah,
right? And then ends
mhm,
up getting a job, doing a lot of media while on the job, and like he so then you're right. We get to this point where he's like, at this current point, Drake has outplayed Jacoby, which then like
yep,
pigeonholes him into this situation where you're well, you say that, and now you're gonna like go start Jacoby because he had also
mhm,
talked about this plan. He was like, we've got a development plan in place
mhm,
for May, and we've got Jacoby here, whatever. And then immediately like so I have it right here. August 26th when he said that
mhm,
about the
mhm,
situation. September 3rd he
yep,
comes out and says, I should have given more context to this comment. At the time, Drake had been playing more time in the preseason than Jacoby, and that was intentional. Goes on.
yeah,
Just like and then Jacoby gets a starting job. He talks about
mhm.
this development plan, and then May just after it was the loss right before the
Yeah, the
Houston
Miami
game.
game. It was like
Yes,
12-10 or something like that. That game, that Miami
offense
game was
can't
the
move the ball,
worst
looks anemic,
game
so
I've ever been.
bad.
Yeah.
And then they're like, "All right, May's starting," and you're like,
Mhm.
"Well, was the development plan always? What was I think that was week 5, right? Or was it
It was week
week 4 or
6.
5? 6? Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
It's like
6 and
was the
6.
development plan always just week 6? I find that hard to believe.
Yeah. I, I was one of the people that was saying you got to start him in that Miami game. Which I guess it could have been, but they didn't start him in that Miami game. And how much better, like you said, did he get in 5 weeks of sitting behind Jacoby? But when he named Jacoby the starter, the day before he had a press conference, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna tell the team who the starter is, and then I'm gonna tell you guys." And after he said that, like we
It's
knew
a
who
good
was gonna be the
yes.
starter because he
He let
said,
that out too.
"Yeah," he said, "What is best for the team right now might not be best for the future." Like, is Jacoby Brissett best for the future? Because are you gonna start Drake May now and then? So we knew that Jacoby Brissett was going to be the starting quarterback the day before. And then he had this whole press conference. And I don't know why he couldn't have just told us that day, because the next day was my first day of school and I was in my first class and I had to like secretly post that Jacoby Brissett was the starting quarterback. So it would have been a lot easier if he just told us the day before. But
Well, he
um,
said he made it clear. He was like in August, he was like, I'm gonna tell the team before the media, and then that didn't
yeah,
happen. And
mhm,
then he was like disappointed that the news was leaked. It's like that
yeah.
information only gets out from the team. Like, how do you
Oh, yeah,
not
you're
have it?
right.
It was
It did
so
get leaked.
weird.
Hmm.
We knew that May was starting before Mayo had some guys were like, I found out that that change happened over Twitter or whatever, and
Hmm.
that was what Mayo said he was trying to avoid. So
Yeah.
again, goes back to the control thing where it was like this guy just didn't have a grasp on anything the team was doing. And recently, oh, what was it? It was Elliot Wolf was just talking about
Yep. The player
how,
just.
yes, player discipline. Yes, I'm glad you saw that too. Um, that he was taking full control of that last year.
Yeah.
How is Mayo not handling player discipline? I mean, I've never been
He
in an
wanted to be
NFL
buddy
locker
to
room.
buddy
Like,
with the
yeah,
players.
that's what I'm saying. Like, I
Hmm.
just felt like he the whole time wanted to be like so media friendly, and what ended up happening was he was just telling everyone what they wanted to hear. He's gonna go
Hmm.
tell the fans we're gonna burn some cash because he knows that was a huge, like, that was the only asset that they had number three pick when they had the quarterback, and they
Yep.
had all this money to spend, and that was about the only hope we had. And
Hmm.
so we get the quarterback, and he's like, we're gonna go burn some cash. It's gonna be great, man. Like, it
Yeah.
just from the jump immediately just the wheels came off.
Yeah. And like, I don't know if this is necessarily a Mayo thing, but Elliot Wolf had full control. And I remember Elliot Wolf saying, like, I'm going to be the one that picks the player at the combine. He said that. So yeah, I don't know. But I want to get into a few individual games that I watched, or the press conferences after the game. I want to start with the Jaguars game in London. That was the game where the Jaguars ran the ball like 12 or 13 times in a row and they couldn't stop it, and that was embarrassing. And what was the running back's name? Tank Bigsby. So I always think Bigsby is like one of the best running backs in the NFL because the Patriots made him look like it. That was the worst run defense in the NFL, and then we went to the best run defense in the NFL this year. So great job by Mike
it's
Vrabel.
it's
Random,
wild, right? That like
yeah,
Like the thing that Mayo was supposed to be good at, and we talked about like the Eagles interview him, and it's like this bright defensive mind.
hmm,
He's basically like calling this defense. I've so retroactively looked back at that and been like, was like how good of a coach was Mayo? Because I thought
hmm,
Mayo was good. Like you look at those years early him coaching and how good the defense was. Like he was
yeah,
there for the boogeyman defense, right? Like in
yep,
2019. And
hmm,
then, 2020 the defense is like we all like you could always just, for 20 years basically. There was a few years, 2017 the playoffs whatnot. But
yep,
like you could always just be like our defense gives us a shot. And that was
hmm,
every week you flip on the TV on Sunday and you know that like Patriots defense is going to be good. Watching
hmm,
that happen in Jacksonville where it's like this team is like lifeless. And that's the game where he ends up calling them soft. It was like,
yep.
what was Mayo supposed to be doing? Like, what is his trick as a coach? If we can't even get the defense right, what's going to be right?
Yeah, and Andrew Callahan had a quote in his article that he did at the end of the season that I reread today, where he was like, it was kind of too much of a collaborative effort in the defensive room, and Demarcus Covington didn't have that much say, and he was like getting input from two other positional coaches, and like Jerod wasn't in the defensive room and giving his opinion. But um, yeah, so a few
And you
things
would
that
think
he
it would be
said.
the other way around, like, right? So like when
Yeah.
a guy gets hired now and he's like the offensive coordinator,
Hmm.
and actually this might even Seattle might be a better is
Yeah.
Mike McDonald's calling defensive plays for Seattle, correct?
Yep.
Right.
Hmm.
Like he comes over, he's like this highly touted defensive coordinator from Baltimore. Their defense balls out for a couple years. He goes over and it's like he's assuming that role. The same way that McVay, Mike McDaniel, like these guys, they just that was their bread and butter. They're taking it over and they're gonna use their superpower per se on the
Hmm.
other side. Mayo not doing that makes me just look back at the whole thing and be like, how good was it? Was Belichick just really calling those defenses and Mayo was just like coaching the linebackers really hard and was like Kraft's boy?
Well,
Like what was going
well,
on?
what actually happened was Steve Belichick was the play caller,
Right.
and yeah, and then Gerard was the what was he like? Just I don't know. He would do everything else, maybe. I don't know.
Zod had like a headset at one point, and I remember them being like we had the Steve Belichick, like, okay, we know that he's, but
Hmm.
like Gerard was, there was moments, and I want to say like preseason games too, where like Gerard was like heavily into the decisions and what was going on the field, whether that's play
Mhm.
calling or not. But like it
Mhm.
just whole thing bizarre.
Yeah. All right. So I found another. So you said the soft football team can't run the ball, can't stop the run, and can't cover kicks. That's what a hard nosed football team can do, according to Jerod Mayo, and I guess that's the consensus. But um, another quote that stood out to me was he said even when we're in the right call, because someone asked him about like why they're calling this and that, he said the players are still not doing their job. So calling out the players, and then also this is kind of random, but in every single press conference, Gerard had two repeated things that he would say. Number one, he would say, "I have to go. I can't answer that question. I have to go back and watch the film." Like you can answer questions without watching the film, and that's just kind of a nitpick. But then he also said, "Take out this 80-yard run, and we actually only held them, or we held them to 100 yards. Take out the 50-yard pass play, and we held them to 300 yards." Like,
Other than
you
that,
can't
Miss
just,
Kennedy, how was the parade? Basically,
yeah,
like
like,
the old adage.
yeah, like you can't take out the one play and then I don't like take out every single carry that they had, and we held them to 0 yards. Like,
It's pretty much what Felger and Maz do every time the Patriots win a game. They're like, take out
yeah,
all the good plays, and they really didn't play that well.
yeah, it's like take out the punt return, and this they would have lost when the team or Marcus Jones had the returns against the Giants or whatever. Um, they wouldn't have lost that game without that return, but it would have been a lot closer. Um, yeah, so I also noticed that he would start every press conference with a long opening monologue, and these press conferences would be 5 minutes, and he would talk for 2 minutes at the beginning of them, and he would like answer the questions that nobody was asking. He would be like, "Yeah, so we didn't run the ball well, and on this decision we didn't do this, and here we didn't." And it's like nobody's asking you these questions, but he would go and answer the questions that nobody was asking. And I thought that was really, really weird. And he also had another quote that I thought was incredibly stupid, honestly. But he said, "We went into the game relying on special teams to make a play." That you can't rely on your defense to score, and you can't rely on special teams to make a play. So that kind of is a reflection of his coaching. But yeah,
He had a
bad.
moment too. This was after Jacksonville. That Jacksonville game was middle. That was October. So then
Yeah.
in December when we lose to the Colts,
Hmm.
he comes out and he was like, that was just one of that was like really when I think all hope was like just done. Like you could have
Hmm.
been like, okay, they're gonna put something together in the back half of this season and look good going in the next year.
Hmm.
But when they allow that game winning drive and they
Yep.
asked like Mayo, like, why didn't you use your timeout? And he was like, well, we won a
Hmm.
Super Bowl. Like just
Yep.
deflecting back to the next thing.
Hmm.
He's like, we won a Super Bowl that way. Comes out like two
Hmm.
days later or a day later, and he's like, well, I shouldn't have said that.
Yep.
I was hot in the moment or whatever. Like just always trying to always trying to say the right thing, and when you're doing that, you end up just saying it, in the worst way possible.
Yeah. I had that quote because I heard that and I was like, "What?" Like he was talking about Super Bowl 49,
Yep.
obviously, but that was a completely different situation because Seattle got down there on a wheel route by Marshawn Lynch, and they got down there on the curse catch, and so that was I think that was like a two-play drive up to that point, and then they hand the ball off to Marshawn Lynch, and then what happens after that. But it was a completely different situation. This was a 12-play drive that the Colts took, and then it ended with an Anthony Richardson 2-point conversion. Um,
It's completely
that he's
ironic that his deflection on a coaching decision he made was, well, Belichick nailed that decision like 10 years ago.
Yeah. Hmm. Exactly, and he was trying to be the anti-Bill, and then he's like,
Right.
at the end of the season, you can see the tone change from Gerard's beginning of the season to end of the season press conferences. He was all happy in the first like 6 weeks after the Bengals win. He was extremely happy, and the press conferences were like 15 minutes, and then they go and they're like 5 minutes. I, every single one of
they
Mike
were they
Vrabel's
were
press
doing they were
conferences.
literally doing damage control like throughout the season, and I felt like
Yeah.
I remember having a conversation with Ethan and all those
Hmm.
guys in our group chat like right after that Mayo thing had happened, because I remember like pulling it up at work and being like so excited to watch it,
Hmm.
and I was like, oh my gosh, like the media is gonna eat this guy alive. Like like the reason Bill, I think that was kind of Bill's MO, was just always gonna be this like closed off. We're gonna keep this thing private. But I just knew that way like Mayo was wanting to be so open. I was like, this guy's gonna be like he's gonna flip back into Bill by the end of the year, and he kind of
Yeah,
did.
he
Like you
did. Yeah.
said, press conferences get shorter, answers get shorter. We're not as like rubbing shoulders with each other as we used to be, because when you're one in what at 2-9,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter how funny that joke, like that joke's not coming across, the way it
Yeah.
was at the opening press conference.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, the Colts was awful. Um, and then the Cardinals game, I thought that might have been his worst press conference. Um, yeah, that was probably his worst one. He walks into the thing and he says, "Good evening, never mind." It's like, what? I don't know if he was like saying that because nobody said it back, or he was just like, "It's not a good evening." Um, he had the "we gave up a big run play that skews the stats," and then he had the worst quote I think of the season where he says, Phil Perry asked him, "Would you consider running Drake in the short yardage situation?" I mentioned the play earlier; it was 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, and he said, "You said it, I didn't." And he goes back on the Greg Hill show and he says, "I was trying to get the question over with." No, you
he
weren't.
said, "I didn't mean anything by that. It was more of a
Yeah,
defensive response."
yeah,
Again, like kind of going back and like the defensive, like
hmm
I just kind of got like ticked off and
yeah,
wanted to get like just
yeah.
wait.
You want
That's being too transparent, is what that is.
to. Yeah, and just throwing Alex Van Pelt under the bus, which he did a few times that year. And Alex Van Pelt was probably the best coach on the staff. Not even probably, he
Yeah,
was.
I mean, honestly, like I don't think that him being a play caller was the best fit. But as
Yeah,
far as like Drake's development and being a quarterbacks coach, which I mean now he's with the Falcons now, right? Like
yeah, I
he's
think
gonna
this
have a
Stefanski.
career doing that for a while,
Hmm.
and he's a good offensive coach. But again,
Yeah,
like and real quickly on the coaching thing too, I felt like that was a big thing. People talk about like the coaching experience. I don't think that was as big of a factor as just the NFL network he didn't have. Like
yeah.
when he,
Hmm.
how many offensive coordinators did they interview in that cycle? It was like,
12, I
it was a
think.
handful. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
lot. That is a
Hmm.
lot. Philly just interviewed like 17 or something. It's like when you interview that many people,
Not good.
there's something that people don't want to be a part of.
Hmm.
And I felt like Alex Van Pelt was probably not the guy at the top of their big board, but I mean,
He was the
who would
last
they
guy they
have,
interviewed.
yeah, who would they have hired if not for him, right? Because
Yeah.
like Mayo doesn't have connections. All the people that he had were Bill. That was it. It
Hmm.
was all part of that
Those guys.
staff, which Bill takes most of all with him, or they leave for whatever reason. And it was like, all right, well, like we're going to make the logical move here. If Demarcus Covington's interviewed for a defensive coordinator position elsewhere, we're going to give him that full title, and then we're just
Hmm.
going to like, Van Pelt's the only guy who wants his job, so it's going to be him.
And they did actually interview a few good guys, if I remember correctly. They interviewed Zach Robinson, I think, and they interviewed Nick Caley, who's now the offensive coordinator for the Texans, and then Zach
Yeah,
Robinson was with the Falcons.
he's with the Bucks now. Yeah, which
He's with the Bucs.
honestly, like
Yeah.
looking back, I don't know. People really like them, and
Mhm.
both of those guys this year have been on.
Yeah,
Well,
but they
I mean, I
didn't
say
end up
bet they've been
working
on the
out.
hot
But
seat. Robinson was and was fired basically.
mhm, yeah, but yeah, no, just a few. Those were just some of the press conference things. And then I think you actually posted this quote after Mike Vrabel had his fight, um, the between the lines quote, and I think he. So I actually don't think that the quote was bad, but I don't think his message was necessarily the worst thing. He just said it in a weird way. So the quote is, "Once those guys cross the white line, there's nothing I can do for them. There's nothing any coach can do for them once they cross the white line. It's my job to continue to prepare not only them but our coaches to go out there and play better football." And what I think he meant, he actually said what he meant by it later,
He probably
but
walked
he
it back
said
on the next Wednesday press conference. Yeah,
no, he actually stood by it. This is the only quote he stood by in his entire existence. It's a miracle, but he said, "If they won, it would have looked like I was giving them credit." That's what he said, which is like the game already happened. You know that they didn't win, so or you didn't win. But I think what he was trying to say is he said this on his first in one of his first press conferences is once you cross the white line, it's yours. Here's the key to the defense. So I think what he was trying to say is that players win games and coaches lose them. I think he was trying to say the Bill Belichick thing,
for
but he
sure.
wanted to put his own spin on it, and it just ended up sounding like I can't do anything for you. You guys suck. I'm sorry.
It's the
Um,
same way. Like he's exactly right on that. Like if they had won and that quote comes out, it's a totally different story. It looks like he is
mhm,
deflecting the not blame, but the glory to the players.
mhm,
And when saying it's just like it's the lack of like understanding the what that quote is going to do and the impact of the words that you say in the press
mhm,
conference. And I think that at the start of the year, because he had made these relationships with the media, he never felt that he was ever going to be the victim of something he said or a
mhm.
narrative, and he was going to be protected in that way, and that Kraft was going to like we're gonna get ahead of all these narratives, and then it was just like blood in the water every time he would speak. And
Yeah.
that's why you would just be like, I'm going to give an opening prepared statement, and questions that I don't have the answer
Mhm.
to, I'm going to go get the answers by watching film, right?
Yeah. hmm Yeah. That's no, I like that. Yeah. Um, and then one last thing, the Bills game. I think he knew he was going to get fired. I watched the press conference like before I had this idea, and a few things. He was visibly upset, and they just won the game, and he's talking about like every time we're going out there, we want to win the game, we want to win football games, we're always trying and stuff, and it's like, and people are asking like, do you think Joe Milton gave you the best chance to win? And he's kind of deflecting the questions because obviously he doesn't. And I remember I looked at my tweet that I had before that game, and I said, if Jerod Mayo starts Joe Milton next week, then his job must be safe because Drake May gives them the best chance to win. So do we even know why he started Joe Milton? Did he think like if they got the number one pick, his job would be safe? I bet. Like
One of
this
the
is me
all-time
speaking.
weird.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I bet that if they lose that game, I think he gets fired on Monday instead of Sunday. I think that Kraft was just so upset with them winning that game and the way the season unfolded, and that he fired him that day just to because the fans were so upset and they needed some instant gratification.
I think that it's different with coaching fires and the quarterback thing. I always feel like the rash like quick decision is always the wrong one, and I
Mhm.
just don't know if one win or one decision was ever enough to keep
Yeah.
Mayo safe.
hmm
And I don't know if going into that week, if the final week of the season, if Kraft was like 4 or 5 plays in this game and a win, whatever, like are gonna make a decision any easier. I feel
Yeah.
like you come to that decision long before if you're gonna make a
hmm
decision like that. And I think he saw what was out there and what could be done. And that's a great place to kind of like, you know, bridge between the Mayo era and this new one is like Kraft was um Kraft was in a bad spot as far as like relationship with the fans. And at that
hmm
point, like I don't think people were super happy with the way the Belichick thing was handled.
Yeah.
And he had like when he talks about that being the hardest decision he's ever had to make, I truly, truly believe that
Yeah.
because he knows the impact of making it, and it's going to be like, I mean, this guy, 1 year in, um, from a national perspective, everyone was like, look at what Dan Campbell did, and these coaches
Yeah.
can't turn around a year. And when you look at this thing on paper and you just lay it out and you say, okay, look at the roster, look at the quarterback play, look at the situation, look at like all these things. It looks like just a normal bad first year of coaching. But for everything we just detailed over the last 30
hmm
minutes, with the way that the disconnection and Alex Van Pelt, I mean, he says in December that he's like, May's out of concussion protocol, he can sneak. And then Alex Van
Yeah.
Pelt's like, we're not going to use him on quarterback sneaks. It's like,
hmm
there is simply just no line of communication between those two.
Yeah.
And it's those things. It's the who's calling the shots here, who's calling the way the team looks, the message, the buy-in. You got guys like quitting on plays, basically.
Yeah.
It was as ugly as it gets. And I think that to wrap that point up, I think it's
hmm
the best decision Kraft, one of the best decisions Kraft has ever made. And it
Yeah.
absolutely has paid off dividends because what he did is he turned around and hired the exact opposite of Jerod Mayo in
hmm
every single way. And I
Yeah.
think it was just like a wake up call. At the time of that season, we were, as bad as it's ever been for the Pats, pretty much.
hmm Yeah.
We having that perspective, it is so important for what we dealt with this season because knowing how bad it was and seeing what it really looks like to be bad. Because if
Yeah.
fans think 2020 was bad and these 8 wins, oh, they missed playoffs,
hmm
but what that is not. It is bad when you see organizational dysfunction, and that is
Yep.
what the Patriots had. And thank you, Robert Kraft, for
Yep.
it sucks he made that decision to begin with. He put himself in that situation, but he
hmm
dragged himself right back out of it. And I think it was like an all-time spike back up with his approval rating.
Yeah. I posted on my story right after they. I think the next after I reposted by Gerard Mayo's been fired. The next post was a picture of Robert Kraft saying "I love you," I wrote "I love you" on in the caption just for him firing Jerod Mayo. But the
And he
organizational
wasted no
dis
time, by the way, dude. Like
no,
it
it
was,
was an hour
I
after
was
the game.
shocked. So Schefter does a segment every
Yeah,
last week of the
leaning out.
season, and it's the in and out, right? And I think it's
Yeah.
great. And I was so surprised because at that point, like we talked about the Chargers game earlier, but I was so done after that Chargers game with Mayo. I was like,
Hmm.
like it has to happen, but I was like, I just don't know if it is. Like, I don't know if Kraft's going to make that move because of the friendship and everything we've already detailed. But like,
Hmm.
when Schefter was like out, I was like, oh, like
Yeah.
he doesn't just
Yeah.
throw that on people. Like it's usually
Hmm.
leaning safe, leaning out, whatever. And he was like, I'm leaning out on this guy,
Yeah.
and I was like,
Hmm.
oh, like this could be bad. And then you talk about the way that his press conference goes, and it's like basically he gets off the podium, and they're like, you're done.
Yeah.
And making a decision like that, it's like going into that week, it was
Yeah.
over.
And I was done with Mayo after the Jaguars lost, which was way too premature. But I did a podcast and I
Was it
listened
ever
to it.
really too premature? Honestly.
Nah, you could have said it from the get go. But
Yeah.
um, no, I was done with him. I think it was like October 18th. I wrote this whole rant on Instagram about how he is not ready for the job. He's not experienced enough. Bill Belichick had 30 years of coaching experience. Jerod Mayo had 5 as an assistant coach, even though he was technically the co-defensive coordinator, I guess you could say, with Steve Belichick. But he had like 5 years of coaching experience. So I was done with him then. I did a podcast. I was like, when your team is 2-6 and you got guys that are speaking out and doing all these things, you're not a good coach. And I remember my co-host Austin, who is having a I don't need to mention what he's doing now, but no, he's just like he disagreed with me, and he he pushed back on me, and I was like, Alex Van Pelt, get him out of here. DeMarcus Covington, get him out of here. Jeremy Springer, you can stay. I don't know if I said that, but
He
no,
was
it's
the only
just
guy. Only guy that
yeah,
was was
yeah.
liked.
Hmm. And yeah, Jeremy Springer. Shout out Jeremy Springer. I do. Great special teams coach. But yeah, I want to go over some of the quotes real quick. The Javon Baker quote to start off, that wasn't really on Jerod Mayo at all. That was kind of just like a Javon Baker um, being Javon Baker situation there. And then Jalen Polk had a few quotes. I have the best hands in the league, and then he quit on the Patriots basically with a story post where he had the three white dots, all black background, and then the peace sign. And then during the season, I like replicated that quote on my story, and I had people like texting me like, "Are you okay, bro? Like, what's going on?" And I was like, "Nah, you don't understand the reference, I guess." But um, yeah, so that, and then we had the KJ Osborne. I don't know if you remember that story post where I also replicated that on my story because I must have been really bored in 2024, I guess. But I rewrote the whole text. It was like, dude, you're the ultimate pro. I think it was like his agent talking, from being told you were
Yeah, I do
inactive the
remember
day
that.
before to going out there and scoring a touchdown because he had a touchdown in that London game. And the reason why he was active was because of Javon Baker. And the quote in the Andrew Callahan article, and it's not the exact quote, but he didn't realize that he was doing something wrong when he broke curfew because he was trying to get back on time. He still broke curfew, but he's like, I didn't do it. I was trying to get back on. I didn't intentionally do it. It's like, man, Javon Baker. Um, but and then he also made Jalen Polk. Like Jalen Polk was a good leader. He was a good kid coming out of college, and he made him a locker room cancer. Um, so I don't know. And then there's the Keon White quotes at the end of the year talking about I'm not being coached. I have to coach myself. And then the Tobias quote to round it all off.
Oh, geez, yeah. I
Hmm.
wonder. I wonder if that is. There's probably still people that hold it against them. I mean, he didn't play a ton this year, but yeah, that
Hmm.
I think that was the wheels. They were
Yeah.
falling off, and then they just exploded in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
Is what happened
Hmm.
with that one.
Yeah. I thought I was so mad at Jelani Tobias after he said that, and maybe the good. Well, the quote was, "Know your place and stay in your lane," and he's talking to fans
After
on the
fans
Fire
were
Mayo.
that was right
Yeah.
about yeah.
Hmm. And I made a whole poster that I printed out, put on my wall, and it was that quote with like pictures of Jelani Sabai, and I was just like, "Hey, I gotta know my place." Like I look at it every time I leave, know my place, and like I don't know, I was like making fun of him for it, but it was bad, and that was when I was like 100%. I think they're gonna fire him because Kraft cares about the fans the most. He cares about the product, but he cares about the fans because he like we know he was a fan. He says it a lot, but So yeah, that's when I knew he was gone. But yeah, so any thoughts on the player quotes?
Dude, I mean, well, the second that he was gone was like the happiest moment, and the player
Mhm.
like with Tavai's thing, like that was a rough moment for
Yeah.
him. But like
Mhm.
people forget if you just play well and like if you turn right back around and plays well, then it's fine. I
Yeah.
don't know what's gonna
Mhm.
happen with his future with the team now, but like no one cares anymore when the
Yeah.
team goes to the Super Bowl the next year. So it's like
Mhm.
sins are forgiven when you start winning. But yeah, the moment that we got the news about Mayo was like I truly did. How many times this season I thought about that was like every week. Like we win, and
Yeah.
then that night I'd be laying in bed and I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that
Yeah.
we ended up getting rid of Mayo because like just
Mhm.
imagine what." And you know what? That's what separates good organizations from bad organizations
Mhm.
because I think the
Aaron
Jets
Glenn.
and Aaron Glenn, yep,
Oh. Yeah.
right out of my mouth.
Yeah.
They're in the same situation.
Mhm.
The moment with that they were playing the Bucks and it was whatever pick six, punt block, whatever, field goal block, whatever. The gif of Aaron Glenn now
Yeah.
where he's like trotting down the sideline,
Mhm.
very funny. Everyone just kind of forgets that they lost that game. And
Yeah.
very similar to the Mayo thing where we talked about what's Mayo's superpower here, like what's he going to do? And actually, ironically, I'm using the term superpower because that's what Aaron Glenn has now said was his play calling. He
Yeah.
came over from a hurt but very good
Mhm.
Lions defense,
Yep.
and the Jets become obviously we've heard the stat a million times now, but they're they never recorded
Yeah.
an interception. They
Mhm.
didn't get that turnover, and it was like
Yeah.
how is it possible? Like when we think about, or I referenced earlier the Miami game that we played late in the year in 23, where you're like, wow, this defense is so down a few men and they're just battling. And the Jets sold everyone. Like they got rid of Sauce,
Yeah.
they get rid of Quinn Williams,
Mhm.
and they just still couldn't compete, get a turnover. They were just getting gashed. It's like, that's just bad coaching. And that's Aaron Glenn's department. Like he's supposed to be over that. And
Yeah.
he comes, out after the game when they lose to the Bucks and he's stomping down the sideline doing his thing, and he's just like basically calling it like a moral victory, and then he has like multiple like lash outs at the media. I'm like, this is deja vu for me. I'm not even a Jets fan. Like it's the same
Yeah.
thing, and then the organization just backs him, and we're like, all right, he's coming back another year. Well, you're just wasting another year because I
Mhm.
like as many players like him. The players on the roster are not the ones that you want to build your future around, anyways.
Yeah. And the players like Jerod Mayo, too.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
I think they
I
liked
was
Jerod as a person, but I don't think there was many people when they hired Vrabel that were like, "Dang." I mean, because there's a lot of similar
yeah.
players from the roster. Like they did a
Mhm.
massive roster turnover, but there is
Yeah.
enough people on that roster where they could have seen the difference.
Yeah, yeah. Kendrick Bourne like talks about how he knew they were going to be good, and how he knew they weren't really going to be good with Gerard. Um,
Yep.
but so I was going to ask you earlier, like, what do you think would have happened this season if the Patriots ran it back with Gerard? And we'll actually get to see what will happen because of
With the
the
Jets.
Jets season. Yeah, but what do you think would have happened with the 2025 Patriots as with Gerard Mayo at the helm?
Man, I think that it would have been a midseason fire, for
Probably, yeah.
sure. I
Hmm.
think we would have never seen the development of May. So if they run
Hmm.
it back, I think they probably would have gotten a new offensive coordinator. There
Yeah,
might have been just
AVP's
someone
fired.
out on the
Yeah.
market. Yeah, they're gonna
Mhm.
fire him and just make him the fall guy, right? Like
Wait,
that's
one
the
real quick. One thing
yeah.
real quick. Do you think remember when Alex Van Pelt got fired like immediately after Gerard Mayo did?
Yes, yeah.
Do you think that that was like a Gerard Mayo was about to fire him and like told him he was fired, and then Kraft took Gerard Mayo into his office and fired him, and that's what happened? Because remember, they like walked. They were like, yeah, actually, Alex Van Pelt isn't fired. Nobody but Gerard is fired. Do you think that's what
That's
happened?
right. Yeah. Honestly, I don't think that Mayo had the autonomy to fire guys. Like probably I like
Yeah.
based on everything we see, who was he really ever making true decisions? Was he a
Maybe he
part
made
of these
Elliot Wolf
game
do it.
plans? Like yeah, who knows? But like
Hmm.
and I'm sure Wolf wanted both those guys and all those guys out knowing that, we've got a
Hmm.
prime opportunity here to go get Mike Vrabel. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think that Mayo, and that's part of the bigger picture, was ever making any type of decisions. I don't
Hmm.
think that the staffers he was probably in those interviews. He probably had a say in what was going on, but I don't think he was bottom line decision maker the way that
Hmm.
Mike Vrabel is, where
Yeah.
it's going to go through him.
Well, we know he wasn't because Elliot Wolf said it. So
Yeah,
he
true.
and do we think that Elliot Wolf cut players?
I think Elliott probably his responsibility I think is like majorly scaled back
Yeah.
from probably what was last year. I think the draft
Hmm.
class is a huge indicator of it. Where
Yeah.
I mean, look, he gets credit for drafting May. You know, he
Yeah.
did, but
Hmm.
he could have passed it or could have traded the pick.
Hmm.
But that one is more of a layup than most would be. But I mean, every other
Yeah.
pick in that draft pretty much missed.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
they're all gone, right? Every single player but May
Uh,
on in that
Caden
draft
Wallace
class.
and Marcellus Tyler are still here, but yeah.
Yeah, for
Mhm.
by um the then you look at the 2025 class and it's just like
Mhm.
all those guys like instant impact. And you're like,
Yeah.
Vrabel brings in members of he knows and those guys and it's different story. I feel like Wolf has found a better lane with a
Mhm.
coach that he's not doing everything. I mean,
Yeah.
the player discipline thing to me was wild. I could not
Yeah.
believe that quote. And
Mhm.
like the fact that that was on his plate. And again, haven't been in the offices of NFL organizations. So maybe I'm wrong. And there's a lot of things that GMs or director of player personnels do that we're not aware
Mhm.
of. But the fact that he was doing player discipline is wild to me.
Mhm. Yeah. I do know though that he was the one to like tell players this year if they made the team or not because of we saw it in Forge and Foxborough. He told
Mm,
Efton Chisholm and Elijah Ponder that they made the team. So I guess it wouldn't have been the worst thing or like the weirdest thing if he was telling the players last year that they were cut and Jerod wasn't there because Mike Vrabel was not there when Efton Chisholm was told that he made the team. So I guess it maybe not the worst thing, but yeah. So what do you think the draft class is looking like with Jerod Mayo here and Elliot Wolf having another year? Do you think Will Campbell's the pick at four? I doubt Will Campbell's the pick at four. I think
really,
maybe
I think they probably still do that. I feel like the last 3 years, 2 years, they've just been like they know what like
yeah,
it's kind of an obvious pick.
maybe, but like I don't. I think Mike Vrabel really loved Will Campbell, and that's why maybe they still take Will Campbell. Maybe they take like they trade back and what's this Kelvin Banks they take. Maybe they take Tet McMillan. Um, and I don't know. Like if Belichick was here in 23, they don't take Drake May. That's kind of like a fact. I
Yeah,
feel like.
probably not.
Yeah.
We never know, but yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, so that's kind of that. And then obviously we have the Andrew Callahan article that gets released at the end of the year, which was he did it 3 years in a row. He didn't do it this year because there was nothing crazy, but he did it with the
Just the
Matt Patricia.
obituary of
Yeah.
the
Hmm.
season.
Those are always the best articles. But I just bought a subscription to the Boston Herald today, so I could read it for this podcast. So, but yeah, he talks about like I won't read any quotes, but the one that actually like stood out was the win versus loss Mayo, where he's so happy. And like when they beat the Bengals, you can't run the ball. What was it like 20 times? And Ramondre Stevenson had like 120 yards
Yeah.
after contact. Like that's not sustainable in the NFL. And he was so happy he didn't. He was like making proclamations to the media, and he hadn't watched the film yet. And I did a podcast after the season by myself where I said he didn't even watch the film for that game. So I was wrong. He watched the film, just not after. Um, but yeah, so I mean, we all know he loves to watch the film because he mentioned it in every single press conference that he ever had, um, unless he was lying the whole time, which hopefully he wasn't. But yeah, so that's pretty much it with the Mayo stuff. That was bad. And now I want to get into the Drake May clutch take. So I'm gonna. I was way too premature to go out there and say I don't know if I don't even know what I said completely, but I said something along the lines of like, do we know if Drake May is clutch? And
You
the
said, is
reason,
there? I
and it
think you said,
wasn't,
is there a clutch problem? You were like, is there like, should we, like look at Drake May's clutch stats? Which honestly, probably a lot of people have the opinion that you did now, looking
yeah,
back. But yeah,
yeah, yeah. So I was like a little bit worried that hey, maybe this guy isn't clutch because we saw and this is really really nitpicking. Oh, Siri heard me. We in training camp we saw him throw like interceptions in red zone periods and like fourth down. And do you remember in the in stadium practice? Um, I know I didn't think you were there, but uh, you may have heard about it. He threw an interception they were doing like a 2 minute drill. He threw a pick six to Alex Austin. And that lost them the blue white scrimmage. So like I was a little worried then. And obviously he threw the two game losing interceptions in Tennessee and against the Rams. And obviously had the great play before that, but that was to tie the game. And that was also a bad coaching decision by Mayo, going back to that, to not go for two there. But anyways,
Totally agree. I was actually in the stadium for that game
were you?
and I was
Yeah.
like screaming. I was like, they have to go for two here. Like, take advantage
Mhm.
of this momentum. And the second they sent the PAT team out, I was like, it's over. We're losing this
Yeah.
game.
You should have, if you got a closer ticket, Mayo might have, like,
I should have.
being
All he did
serious.
was listen to the fans and media, right?
Yeah.
So like we
Mhm. Yeah, he might have actually done that. But yeah, so he throws those interceptions, and then it was the game against the Bills that I did it after, and he couldn't get the ball moving. He didn't throw an intercept or touchdown against the Bills this season. Um, he even in that great win, he didn't throw for a touchdown, and I was a little, worried about that. And then the next week, he obviously leads the game-winning drive, so I have to eat my words. But I think it was just too premature to call him clutch versus not clutch. I think you need to see two examples of one thing. And after the postseason, he was never really put in a situation where he needed to construct a game-winning drive. So we didn't really see much, but he was not good in the playoffs, and maybe that's because of. I think he lost his confidence personally, but I don't think that's necessarily a clutch thing. But I don't know. That was just my take on the clutch.
Yeah, I think at the time you said that, one thing I had pointed out was like, all right, so we look at the Titans game, right? And I'm talking about the 23 one or
Yep.
24.
Hmm.
I felt like May in that season, I immediately, May came onto the scene and looked really, really good. And
Hmm.
people had, when you look that good in your rookie year, people want to kind of just find something like, what's the thing? What's the nitpick? And I
Hmm.
felt like for him, it was the turnover problem, which is a little bit kind of, in the postseason come back up. But
Yep.
when a guy turns the ball over a lot, whether it's his fault, not fumbles, picks, whatever, I feel like you just got to look at that season and be like, when May was in that huddle and they're two and whatever, and they have, they're down in the game, it's like that construction of an offense is so much different than what he was dealing with this year. And in
Hmm.
that Tennessee game, like I mentioned with, go for two here and just put the dagger in them, it was like, I think May is like, if I don't make this play, work like I have to basically be Superman the whole time. I don't have the
Yep.
playmakers. This year he gets, way more offensive help. But last year it's just like very much like where, you look at Mahomes in Texas Tech, and a lot of people have talked about this, where people missed on his pro career because they saw the turnover problem at Texas Tech.
Mm.
And it's like, yeah, he does turn the ball over a lot, but he also just has this mindset of like, I have to take this game over. And what you
Yep.
take the good with the bad, and that's that Josh Allen's gotten that distinction.
Hmm.
So that's the first part of it. I think I mentioned like there was a lot of moments in his rookie season where it was like I think May was just like F it, we ball, and we
Yeah.
just got to do that.
Hmm.
The second part of it, I think what people the clutch situations. He didn't really have a lot of clutch situations to deal with this year. At the end of the
He had
season,
one
he
or
did.
two,
I would say the
right?
Ravens game was massively
Yep.
clutch. So
Oh yeah.
like most of these games, the flow of the game would be like Patriots open with getting scored on, and then it
Yep.
was just like, an avalanche after that. And they would just
Hmm.
go up like 20 right after they would get
Yep.
scored on. Or they would just pounce on a team early, and that was all she
Hmm.
wrote. You look at like the Jets game, in the second one in the later half of the year. Miami was
Giants
like
game.
that at the end of the year. Yeah, right.
Hmm.
They just throttled these teams.
Hmm.
So then the before half was my big like there was
Oh
so
yeah.
many times in the front of the year I should have looked up exactly the Saints game. I think is one of the better examples of that, where it's like
Hmm.
the times when you need to score or need to pick up those first downs. Everyone always looks at clutch as like, okay, we're making this like this empirical like 2 minutes, and they score and lead a game winning drive or whatever it is. They don't have to be down. It's just those moments where like all the pressure is on and you have to play like flawless football. And I felt
Hmm.
like before halves when a team would score or punt or whatever, and it'd be a 4th and 2, and they'd decide to punt, and they'd give the ball to May with a minute 27, and it would just be like, boom, immediately found someone.
Hmm.
The Saints example, I believe it was right before half, right, with the Mac Hollins like the double deep ball thing, where you know we get backed up, and then May's just like, I'm going right back to it. I'm finding another deep ball. And
Hmm.
I just felt like that was his MO the whole year. It's like, I'm just going to get
Hmm.
this thing done. I'm going to move this team
Yep.
down. Yeah, he doesn't score. You said he didn't throw a touchdown against Buffalo. I would
Yep.
say that throwing that pass to Diggs, the one that we've
Yeah. That's.
probably watched the slow mo of 100 times, is as
Hmm.
good of a touchdown. We don't
Yeah.
run the Kansas City offense where at the 4 yard line we just bootleg the quarterback out to try
Hmm.
to get a pass in. Luckily, we had
Yep.
Ramondre Stevenson, who was an absolute bulldozer.
Yep. No. Yeah. Those are good points. You're right on the end of the half
And
stuff,
like you
but I
said,
just think,
we need the whole picture,
yeah.
right? Like
Hmm.
it's tough to call someone unclutch or clutch in this point, but I think that the thing about, and sorry to continue that, but the thing that
You're good.
May was so good at this year was um like just having trust in the quarterback is everything. And if you like, there's probably like Jared Goff's a really good quarterback, but there's definitely buried in the back of Lions fans' minds, like, what if just like a really dumb interception happens right now? And I feel like
Hmm.
that is the levels and the tiers of quarterbacks. And with Brady, it was like that's never gonna happen. Like he's not gonna have
Hmm.
the ball in his hands in a moment where we gotta have it, and he'll just royally screw it up. Like that never happened. And obviously
Hmm.
May is not on that spectrum yet. It's still early, but I felt like at times this year when like we get down to the Ravens, it would be like,
Yeah.
man, but we still have May, and like he's just gonna find a way. And then it's like the Kyle Williams play where he just
Yep.
perfectly puts a ball to a rookie, and you're like,
Hmm.
that looks like clutch to me.
Yeah. And I remember during that game, my dad came into my room, um, and he was like, "Go to sleep. They're not winning this game. Down 11 points." I'm like, "Hold on, they might." And like this is like 6 days after I just made this take that Drake May is not clutch. I should have no faith, right? Um, and then I and maybe it was just because I had the flu and I was like I had a sick brain, but I don't know. But I had faith, and they I don't know they came back. That was probably my favorite game of the last like 10 seasons, non playoffs, but um, yeah. And
Yeah,
then you said the one thing about Brady, and I rewatched the I don't know. Sometimes when I'm bored, I'll rewatch games, and I rewatched Super Bowl 51. I rewatched when they were down 28-3 to the end of the game, and on one of the drives, Brady threw a ball and it like hit a Falcons defensive back right in the chest, and he dropped an interception. And I think that like sometimes Brady did make mistakes, and like obviously he didn't. He's still the greatest quarterback of all time. And this is like he made mistakes, but sometimes they just got lucky. And sometimes Drake May is going to make mistakes, and or sometimes he does make mistakes and he doesn't get lucky. And I think that's part of being a clutch quarterback, getting a little bit of luck involved. I
getting
guess.
luck and putting yourself
Yeah.
like, and when you
Hmm.
get luck on the other end, because people will do this all the time, where they'll say, "Oh, well, I mean, this guy had this happen in this game or this." Like I always think back to that 2021 NFC Championship, the Packers versus Bucks. Brady
Yep.
threw 3 picks in that game. Not all of them were his fault. There was just some. Mike Evans had like a weird one, in the end zone,
Mhm.
but like that means Rodgers was gifted 3 turnovers.
Yep.
That's lucky. When you go
Yep.
into that game plan, you're not like, oh, Brady's going to hand us the ball 3 times. And
Hmm.
if you are the best, then you capitalize on the luck. And when you're unlucky and Mike Evans like can't track a ball in the air and all of a sudden it gets picked off or you throw a really dumb
Yeah.
interception, you got to go out on the next drive and have you have to make up for it. And that's what I
Hmm.
thought Brady was so good at. And that's what I think what I
Yep.
saw from May this year, where I was like, that feels like Patriots football. That is what
Hmm.
we're used to seeing.
Yeah, he never really got too down on himself, and he was always able to respond, like you said, to the mistakes that he made, which was good. Like he threw an interception to Carson Schlesinger in that Browns game, and then he comes back out and they win like 31-14. Like, and they were down at that point when I think it was like a Harold Fannin touchdown before that, so they were down like 7-0 when he threw that pick, and it didn't bother him. He had a deep touchdown to Booty. Um, and this is a super random thing that I have been thinking about for a long time. But when Drake May throws a deep ball, and I don't know like if this camera is messed up or whatever, it's like opposite. But Drake May will always throw the deep ball along this side, no matter which way they're facing. Drake May has never completed a deep touchdown along this side of the field. I swear, like this is a super random side note. But if you go back to the deep balls, like I can probably name most of them because there's been like 9, right? The deep ball touchdowns. The first one was Booty right sideline to in the what was it, the Texans game. He
The
threw the
first game in
booty
his
one
career.
in the Bills game, same sideline. He had what was this year? What was like the first deep ball that he had this year? I don't remember.
He had one. He's obviously had the Kyle Williams one.
Kyle Williams
He
on the same
had, I
side.
don't know if you want to call it Demario Douglas. He had one for Booty against Tennessee. He had one with
Yep.
Booty
Same.
against New
Oh.
Orleans.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
He had obviously the one in the playoff game against the Texans.
Hmm.
But I mean, you're right. Like, yeah, he does always the right sideline. Maybe that's, I don't know, because Booty's on the right
Yeah.
side and he's right-handed. But
Yeah. And then also, if it's this way, if it's coming towards this end zone, like that way, it's the Kyle Williams touchdown against the Giants. It's the Booty touchdown against um the Browns, like I mentioned earlier. It's always along this side of the field. I don't know what it is. Maybe Drake May just likes that side of the field. Um, but yeah, that's just a random thought that I had that I really needed to share. So
I was thinking about the
yeah.
Giants game too. There was like, obviously, like you look at that game and you're like, this is a blowout. Before, I want to say it was Pat's last touchdown. Um, we almost like May almost threw like a pick six, and it was like that could have absolutely flipped the game. It would have looked totally different. All of
Mhm.
it, like we think about clutch plays being these, late fourth quarter moments when they're down four. It's like no, like
Mhm.
being clutch is almost avoiding the clutch situations.
Yeah.
And right after that, they ended up scoring. I want to say it was like Henry or Hooper. Um, they scored after that, and it opens the floodgates. And I think that game was that Monday Night Football or
Yeah.
Sunday? Yeah.
Monday.
Oh, Aikman. He was like, "Oh, like we could have just had a different game if he holds on to that ball." And it's
Hmm.
like, turns right around and they end up scoring or kicking the field goal or whatever they did to extend the lead to
Yeah.
be to a point. But it's like, those moments are what it comes down to.
Mhm. Yeah. I don't remember that, which is kind of weird. Maybe I believe you, but I don't know. Because that could have been where I was like walking out of the stadium because I left that game early just because I had school the next day. Monday night games, very fun. Have you been to a game at Gillette?
Yeah, I have been to a few. I went to, let's see, the last time I was at Gillette it was the Panthers game this year.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's a good game to go to.
Oh, I have actually a really funny story about the Panthers game. I don't think
Okay.
I've said this to anyone, even Ethan, but okay, here. This is we are it's the well that was week 4, right?
Yep.
So we opened the season with a loss to the Raiders, beat the Dolphins, lose to the Steelers. I think that's the
Yep.
first 3 games. So we're
Hmm.
1-2. That Panthers game is like must win. Like you have to win this
Oh
one.
yeah. Hmm.
And Gillette, like just with the season and the energy, like obviously Gillette's packed, right?
Hmm.
And there's like the opening drive, which we come to learn was just that was they were always going to go down and score on the opening
Yep.
drive. That was up
Hmm.
until the end of the season.
Yep.
But these there was one play. Was that Gonzalez's first game back? I think it
Yep.
was. It
Hmm.
was because
Hmm.
he didn't play against Pittsburgh, right? So
Yep.
Gonzalez is in, and Tet, I don't know, gets it could have. Who knows? You're up in the 300s, 400s, like you
Hmm.
can't really see.
Yep.
Tet gets like pretty wide open, and they go into like enemy territory,
Hmm.
and this guy behind me, like in just this like thick Boston accent, which I'm sure everyone up there's got. I'm not from the area, so
Yeah.
news to me. But like, it's just he's like, we're no better than the Browns. This is just like such a joke of a team. We're watching the same thing happen over and over again. This looks like the Jerod Mayo years. And then like Ethan Gillette Nation, sorry to
Yeah.
dox him on this, like turns to me and he's like, how bad do you think it has to get for Kraft to sell the team? And I was like, okay, guys. Like, it's like, it is the first quarter here of of the
Oh
fourth game of the
man.
season. I was like, I'm a optimist to a fault a lot of the times, but I was like, here.
Yeah.
And then, like, right, like 4 plays later, Marcus Jones, like, returns that punt, and then
Yeah.
we didn't lose another game until,
Mhm.
like, December.
Yeah.
So it was I think about that moment all the time from that game. So, like, yeah, that was the last time I was in Gillette, but I just remember, like, oh man, like the fans were getting unruly off like one Tet catch to cross the
Mhm.
50 to kick a field goal in a game that was like 42-12 or whatever it was.
Yeah. That sounds like me. I mean, I've never said something like how much is it going to take to sell the team, but I'm like, this defense sucks, this team sucks. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen like my mid-game posts, but it's just like Drake May's the worst quarterback. Like, I don't say that, but like, I'm
That's
like,
what makes fans fans though. Like just,
yeah,
like that's what, nothing can be taken seriously in the heat of war. When
yeah,
fans are going, ballistic on being like, cut this guy's terrible. Once the game ends, like Jerod Mayo, you can go look at the film.
yeah, yeah. Go look at the film. Yeah, no, but like, I'll post these things, and then people will come back to it after they win. It's like they were down. I guess it was like they were down like 10-7 to like the Browns or whatever. I don't know, the Bengals. It was like 14-0. And I'm like, this is a terrible game. We need to get out of Cincinnati right now so nobody else gets hurt. And like all these people are like, we won the game. What are you
I
talking
also
about?
went to the Cincinnati game. That was the two
Yeah,
games I went to this year,
that
and
was
it
a
was just like,
terrible game.
dude, yeah, it was not. I mean, I felt great just getting the win. Obviously, the Will
Mhm.
Campbell injury and just it was
Yeah.
a hospital out there. But yeah, it was the same thing, dude. It was like halftime of that game, and Pats fans are just like, the coordinators, it looks terrible. Like the offense is not coordinated right. Like, May looks bad, that pick six, and then, they end up winning, and May looked like himself in the second half enough to get that done. Both of those games, by the way, the difference is Marcus Jones.
Yep. Pick six in that game against, yeah, Marcus Jones. Shout out Marcus Jones. Got extended. Um,
Forever, get lifetime contract. I never want to
yeah.
see the day where he's not a Patriot. Love that guy.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I remember just like 2022, it was kind of like that, where it's just like Marcus Jones is the reason why we won 8 games. Not entirely. And then this year, it's like they won 3 games because of Marcus Jones. Really. The Giants game, the Panthers game, and then the Bengals game. So I'm trying to think, did he
Yeah,
have, and then the
and,
Texans
and
game
like
they won
in
because
those
of him.
games, right? Like you look at the score of what the Panthers game was, and you're like, all right, like this was a
Yeah.
non compete from them. But at the point, like I jokingly mentioned about like fans kind of just like getting unruly in the first quarter because we've been hurt so bad the last few years,
Mhm.
and it's like Marcus Jones is the energy shifter there, and the same with the
Yep.
Giants, and the same with the Bengals. Like whether it's offense, defense or special teams, he is an absolute spark plug that gets everyone
Mhm.
moving in the right direction.
Yep. And they, in 2023, you remember that game against the Jets where they won? That was because he had a huge return, set them up to score a touchdown to take the lead or something. And I don't
Marcus
know
Jones
that.
versus the Jets with a huge return. Where have we,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
back to back
2022.
years, the Killers.
Yeah. That game was the best game of that dark time. The game against the Jets where Drake got a concussion.
Yeah, I
Um.
mean that catch Booty had to go to the one. Like, I mean, I was a,
Yep.
a huge fan of him just coming out of
Mhm.
college, and I always felt like he never was getting the proper shake.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was like the coming out, not kind of uh, for
Yeah.
him just to have like a huge play and be part of that
Mhm.
moment. And
Yeah.
obviously, Jacoby goes and scores.
And I don't want to throw my dad under the bus, but after the Eagles game where he didn't get 2 feet in bounds, he was like, "We got to cut Booty. Got to cut him."
Oh, people were so the NFL receiver can't get 2 feet in bounds, dude. I
Yeah.
was one of them. I'm sure you can scroll back on my account and find me. I think in my Monday morning thoughts, I said something along the lines of like, "How does an NFL receiver not get 2 feet in bounds?"
Yeah.
Like everything, whether it's a first quarter offense or whatever, it takes time, and
Mhm.
clearly saw that with the way the team has
Yeah.
gone the last few years.
I I didn't. I supported Booty. I'm proud to say that because I don't think I had the. I don't know. Like I wasn't. That was like the first game that I watched. Like when I don't know how to like because like obviously I was tapped into the Patriots from 2014 to 2022, but then 2023 is really when I started to be tapped
Yeah,
into. That was the first game that I had like watched as like
when you
a
go into it with like an off season where you focused on it, it's a
yeah.
it's a priority every Sunday versus just the casual game watching on Sunday.
Yeah.
I get that.
hmm Yeah, so that was the first season, and I don't know if I was like, I don't know, just not mentally there to be able to criticize players yet. But at the end of the season, I got there with Mac Jones. So I guess I learned some things. That 2023 and 2024 season, like I was thinking about it, like I'm looking back on it, I'm very happy that those were the first 2 seasons that I was really, really like I ran the Instagram account for because it made me appreciate this season so much more. Because I was so convinced in the 2023 offseason, the Patriots, Mac Jones returns to his 2021 form, Super Bowl, going to the Super Bowl. Look at the league, they stink. We're going to, and that's kind of what they did this year. Whereas like the league isn't good and they can make a run. And I was like 2023, the 2023 Patriots, they have a good off. If they have a good off season, they get a wide receiver one. They signed DeAndre Hopkins, who I made DeAndre Hopkins my life for like 2 months, and then he turned out to be not great for Tennessee. And then I did the same thing for Calvin Ridley for like 2 days. Um, but yeah, I don't know. So the 2023 Patriots will always be the Super Bowl champions in
I think
power.
you're spot on with the we needed those moments to
hmm
appreciate what it is now, and I think like as fans, as people who have accounts, as people who want to like be tapped in and make this like an
hmm
everyday priority just to talk
Yeah.
about and think about. It's like I mean, in my perspective, like I probably like 2013, 14 was when I was like really starting to get into sports as like a early high schooler.
Yep.
And it was like, that's the prime time. Like that's when you like exactly the
Hmm.
situation you're in now. Like that's when you want to be, you know, you have all this time to dedicate to it. And I, up until that point, I had never seen anything close to bad. And I mean, I'm a blessed
Hmm.
sports fan as a lot of Boston, but like, you just don't know what it looks like. And now we know what the worst looks like. We know what mid looks like. We know what
Yep.
great looks like. And I think it makes us appreciate it more. And I think it makes us just like smarter people to be able to evaluate those things. Like, I mean, we'll see how the Aaron Glenn situation turns out. But
Yeah.
had we not experienced Jerod Mayo, had we not experienced a coaching surge, I think, we'd have a lot of different ways to look at what other teams are doing. And I think it just makes you a better, more educated fan to have the roller coaster
Yeah.
of the whole thing. As
Hmm.
much as we want to just keep winning, it's very easy to just win and be like, oh, like team culture is so easy. Well, it's
Yeah.
not. We saw
It's not.
how bad it gets.
Yeah. Yeah. So one more thing before we wrap up. You mentioned that you never really lived in Boston, I think. Um, how did you become a Patriots fan?
That's a great question. So yeah, I'm from the southeast, so I am not from the northeast, which
Mhm.
usually is met with when I'm out somewhere watching a Pats game and I rub it in one of my like Falcons or Titans fans friends' face. They're usually like, "Well, you're just a bandwagon." My mom's side of the family, I got family from Canton, Massachusetts. So growing
Mhm.
up, like just because teams down here, everyone just cares about college football. It's not really
Mhm.
NFL oriented. It was
Yep.
very easy for them to just throw like Celtics games and Pats games on, and that just became like what we were
Mhm.
into for the longest time. So down the family line, but I'm very fortunate to be a Patriots fan, not
Yeah.
anything else, because and
Mhm.
Celtics. I mean, we've lived as good of
Yeah.
a sports life over the last 20 years as we possibly could.
Mhm. Yeah. Red Sox fan?
I'm a Braves fan,
Okay.
actually, yeah.
Yeah.
Which actually for the last like 5 or 6 years has been pretty awesome. Like
Yeah.
2021 saw the Braves win
Hmm.
the World Series,
Yep.
Celtics win
Hmm.
in 24, like, and then obviously all
Yeah.
before that was the Pats. It's like my friends hate me.
Yeah.
They think I'm the worst. So
Yeah. The Braves. Yeah. There's this one guy on YouTube who's a fan of the Indiana. So they end up winning this year, and then he's a fan of the Lightning, who won in like 2021 and 2022. I don't know if that's right. I don't
at
watch
some
hockey.
point, dude, that would have been the worst fans to be
Yeah.
associated with.
And he's a Chiefs fan. So again, um, he is his account's like Chiefs Rays Bolt. So the Rays they went to the World Series in 2020, but they haven't been good since. I guess they were good in 2021, but yeah. So like he's a fan of all these teams, and they're like winning championships. So like he's been so fortunate over the last 4 or 5 years. And I don't watch basketball; I watch baseball and football. So the Red Sox and the Patriots haven't won a Super Bowl or championship since 2018, which is like, oh, 2018, that's not that long ago.
Yeah,
But I mean, like for me, it's like what that's like almost half my life.
yeah.
So yeah. All right. That'll pretty much do it for the Patriots Real Time Podcast, the Jerod Mayo era podcast. Thank you guys for watching. I will be back with another podcast with Andrew Callahan actually on Monday. So tune into that. And yeah, Grant, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me on.